This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dorrinal and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Saturday, October 1st, 2022. Hey, Dorrinal, when I was a kid, I had those little mystery books like The Adventures of the Black Hand Gang and some others. And I remember learning several things from them, such as a person with a length of reed of so long that's a quarter, that's the size of a quarter, will die because they can't expel the air. And so all of the carbon dioxide will accumulate in the tube. And also that a troop of soldiers marching across a wooden bridge can actually cause the bridge to collapse because the rhythm of their marching can set up vibrations in the wood, which can cause it to fall apart. And the last one is, oh, darn, that's a Sunday, not a Saturday. Well, my whole spiel just fell apart, but I'll tell it anyway. If the first of a month falls on a Sunday, it's going to be a Friday 13th that month.
Oh, I never put that together. But it's gonna be a messed up month regardless.
I keep on thinking that today is Sunday. Seriously, like all morning, I keep on having to remind myself it's not Sunday.
Oh, our poor chat would be waiting the whole 24 hours.
I know, I'm just saying, by which I mean, you're lucky I'm here.
We always feel lucky when you're here, Warpig.
Hey, I didn't tell you what I set up this week, I don't think.
I'm all ears.
You you had made a suggestion that for our 300th episode, uh, instead of doing one of our regular shows, we should do like a live, um, a live AD&D game session.
What? Yes, I remember suggesting that. I can't
So,
believe you've set that up. What have you set up?
I asked Drew Bay and Jeffro Johnson if they wanted to come on the show for a 4-hour AD&D session on our 300th episode, whenever that is.
That sounds. Oh, that's exciting. Yes,
Oh,
I'm
they
hearing
said
this for the
yes.
first time.
Sorry, I didn't
I
make
should
that
hope so.
clear.
I'm glad they said yes because I'd hate to have to find lesser players to join us.
So, we got 6 episodes until then, but
Should be mid-November.
sometime around there, yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to miss episodes for various things, but yeah, should be sometime around there.
And if we get delayed and it has to be around Thanksgiving, maybe we'll do the week after Thanksgiving. Or heck, maybe everybody's sitting at home on that Saturday and wants to play D&D while scarfing down turkey sandwiches.
So, yeah, we are doing for our 300th episode. We're doing a special episode instead of our regular ones, and I think it's going to be an on-camera episode. So,
Heck yeah.
um, oh, we need to put this in the comments. I remember last week how I threatened that I was going to throw up some of the pictures from the con.
Yeah.
I went ahead and did that, so we need to put in the Twitter link to that thread so people can go look at some of the pictures from the con.
Great.
Because I did
Send
a
me
Twitter thread of that.
send me that link. I'll make sure it gets in the show notes for today and last week.
Absolutely.
I saw some of them. There's some cool pictures.
And let's see. Trying to remember if there's anything important news-wise. At the con, I asked a couple people if they wanted to be on the show, but I announced that last week, so we don't have any definite confirmations. And that's funny because convention and confirmations both have the same, syllable. They begin with con. That's why that's funny. But you're not laughing, so we'll move on.
Hey, so last week was a hit and miss for me because that cold stretched through all the way till Tuesday. But I don't recall if I mentioned this last week. Did I mention that I got some new pets at the house? It's been
No.
a absolutely delightful week. I just got 2 little kittens for the house. They're specifically a birthday gift for my girl, and we absolutely adore them. I don't have them on camera today, so my week's been hit or miss, but the goods have far outweighed the bads. Oh man, I need to talk about Brovenloft. Everybody's champing at the bit here. How was your week, DW?
I'll be honest, my week was work. We had a Tuesday night session that was going to be scheduled, but only 2 players showed up, so we didn't run the session, but we sat around talking about D&D and stuff. That was me and Jeffro and Drew, which is when we scheduled the 300 thing. So yeah, that wasn't a good night. But then, we had our Thursday night game, which I'm going to talk about because we learned a couple of things. Mostly, we learned that when the Bro SR sets up a motto, sooner or later they have to eat it. And I'm going to explain that in a bit. But yeah, I really, 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 I had to chop up my day even finer because I've chopped up my day into times when I can work on different things. I have a morning is my social media time up until lunch. Lunch till 3 is my writing time. And now 3 till dinner, which is only an hour and a half, is my reading time. And that's split between books I have to read and checking on things in other books that I need to read that is more straightforward research. And then after dinner is design time. Until 8, and then from 8 until 10:30 at night is 8 until 10:30 at night is watching stuff for the show, or occasionally reading stuff for the show or listening to stuff for the show. And then after 10:30, I start getting ready for bed at midnight, and I'm waking up generally at 5 something in the morning, and that's from the morning until about 7 ish is getting up and 5:30, 5:45 is getting up and getting ready for my day, and then eating breakfast. So Yeah, my day's pretty tightly scheduled.
Wow. I don't
So
envy you.
everything good that happens to me in the week happens within within that schedule.
Well, so we're gonna do we do Brovenloft first. We're gonna do crazy AD&D first.
I will let you catch everybody up on Brovenloft, because actually you are far more plugged into those events than I am. I am well out on the periphery of Brovenloft at this point.
Well, here's what we know. Brovenloft, the epic Brownstein going on in Halloween-themed world, kicked off today, and there were multiple factions aiming to make a strong play on day one. And the one faction nobody really saw coming made a play as soon as it started. So we've got something like a dozen high-level characters. Most have kingdoms and large armies, and they're all fighting over the land. And I happen to know through my spy network there were several factions hoping to make a big play on day one. Well, I tell you this, we found out on Twitter this morning, as the clock struck midnight, the first faction to make a play was Joy of Wargaming's spy network, I presume, as the King of Elfland, the Lord of the Labyrinth, the Errol Bronig himself was assassinated as soon as Brovenloft was live. Now, if that's not an opening statement, I don't know what is. And we know
That's a
that
pretty
the
bold move to begin
pretty
things with.
and here's some insider information based on my spy network. I'm pretty sure there was more than one faction on the table, more than one patron who planned on eliminating the Elf King on day one. So, Elf King, if you're listening, you had no chance. Sorry, man. Don't feel too bad about it. Somehow your name got pulled out of the hat. And accusations are already flying around. Bropan has accused the Pope of sending assassins out. Did he mean him? Did he mean the assassin sent after Bropan? Did he mean the Elf King? We don't know. So this whole thing, everybody wanted to make a move the first day. There are armies marching all around the map, and the first thing that happened, as soon as this clock strikes midnight, one of the patrons is eliminated instantly. Really cool stuff. Yep.
Nothing. Please continue.
So, behind the scenes, the gracious referee has been managing dozens and dozens of personal messages for the past 3 weeks from everybody jockeying to make their plays to get ready for the month, including non-stop divination requests, because we're talking about we've got at least 2 extremely high-level clerics. They're capable of raising the dead. At least, I think I want to say at least 2 very high-level magic users able to use the wish spell to literally unmake reality. They can do whatever they want, subject to the normal backlash and limitations one might expect from A Tale of the Monkey's Paw. Even mid-level magic users can have access to spells such as clairvoyance, which does not have a distance limit or a simple crystal ball, right? Typical fantasy scrying, spying stuff. This poor guy has been dealing with that nonstop because here's what we found out. In elite play, and this is a lesson they learned last July, and we're putting it into full effect in Brovenloft. Information is probably more valuable than anything else. So everybody with access to ways of getting information, be it a network of spies and assassins or clairvoyance spells, even or clerics have divination. So if you have spotted army or an opposing force or a city or an enemy camp, you can immediately get a full assessment of their strength in men and treasure.
Are you suggesting that the person with a network of spies and assassins for hire was hired to spy on and assassinate someone? Dad, you're on really shaky ground there, mister.
Which is great because, hey, the Rat King put out his services right there in September. He says, hey, guys, I'm just going to do spying missions for you. All you got to do is pay me. And he's been one of the busiest patrons this whole time. My spy network doesn't overlap with that.
I do want to say this. This all goes to show why I think that the alignment of the assassin class should really be any evil and any lawful. Because governments have spies and assassins. I mean, proper governance. Sauron. Who played Sauron in the movie? Oh, don't give me that crap.
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee was literally a spy and assassin during World War II. There's no way he was evil as a person. You just have, instead of a freelance assassin who works for money, a lawful assassin has to work for the government or some other lawful patron, a noble, a king, whatever. I'm not saying, we should house rule that into every AD&D campaign. I'm just saying that I think that is a plausible interpretation of the class for them to work for whatever government is in their land. And these series of events demonstrate why. The Pope should be able to call on lawful good assassins who go out and sneak around and spy on people, have all access to the spying rules of the assassin class, without them being evil and without them threatening alignment change just for being evil. Or, because if you're a lawful evil character, but you're always working for the good guys, what kind of bind does that put you in? But if you're a lawful good character who genuinely believes in good, you can work for, good governments. And as long as you're obeying the law, and as long as you're doing it by their rules, lawful good strikes me as a perfectly viable alignment for an assassin slash spy, because we have seen plenty of cases where assassins have gone out and shattered enemy armies just with a few assassinations. And again, the series of events you just described show why. But please continue. Or disagree with me.
I wasn't prepared for this. I do completely disagree. I think it's appropriate. First of all, in a game space, it's perfectly appropriate to restrict a class to a particular alignment or alignment range. And in this case, the alignment range is good enough for me. I don't think it's ever a lawful good act to, as a profession, kill people for money. That's what the assassin is. He kills people for money. And if you're ordered to undertake a mission and so on and so forth, um, even if hired by a lawful good government or lawful good thing, that first of all that would violate the magistrate, whoever is hiring you to do the job, be it legitimate government or not. I have a hard time believing that employing an assassin is a good act. And I do not buy the argument that assassinating the right target is not necessarily an evil act. You can't create good by evil actions, and so that's where my disagreement comes in.
If you have to, during war or to prevent war, have someone sneak into an enemy stronghold and specifically kill and target one individual.
You can't trolley problem me on this one, Warpig.
No, it's not a trolley problem.
It's a trolley problem. It's an evil act. It's
just the real world.
Maybe. Well, we live in a awful, real, fallen world, which is why we assassinate people in fantasy worlds.
That's true.
But, where were we? Gosh, we're going to take up the whole show if we hash this whole thing out. But I do understand your point of view. If you have a legitimate government within a legitimate need, perhaps a lawful neutral character would be a reasonable assassin. And of course, in the Dungeons and Dragons game, you could always play a neutral thief and assassinate the old-fashioned way by just using your thief skills to set up a situation to kill them. Being an assassin gives you many, many benefits, mechanically speaking.
I am more thinking of the lawful neutral and lawful good people as being primarily spies. That assassination is something they would very, very rarely do, that they're more spies than assassins.
That
if
would
you
be
see
a
what I'm
great.
saying.
I do. Thieves aren't permitted to be good, but I would love to see, a lawful neutral spy network in a lawful good nation.
Aren't these just allowed to be neutral good? I could be wrong about that.
I think, yeah, I think it's possible for thieves to be neutral good.
I'm sorry, I completely hijacked you, and we wasted so much time discussing my.
No, this is this. Well, it's interesting to you and me, and if everybody listening just fell asleep, don't worry. There's not much else to talk about in Brovenloft. Just to recap, Brovenloft started stroke of midnight. The Elf King is assassinated, which was surprising in two ways. Well, I mean, the main way it surprised me was that I wasn't sure that you could do that to one of the patrons. I didn't expect the assassins to be powerful enough to make that happen, or I guess it was a mistaken impression on my part. I was given the impression that you had to do a little bit more to take one out. I thought I expected the DM to have a little I mean, September was the grace period, so not a grace period, but I was just surprised that you could gank a patron on an assassination check, which leads me to the other thing that we learned from Brovenloft, and we were talking about divination. Everybody's using their divination spells. In fact, immediately, first thing this morning, as soon as everybody caught wind of what's it called, the assassination, one of the factions immediately consulted all their clerics and made sure that nobody was gunning for that patron. That it's like you could tell the whole game becomes live because then the other patrons catch wind of this and they say, "Oh crap, is anybody doing that to me? Because I would like my character to survive till tomorrow, right? Information, information, information. Somebody paying attention and using their spells right, or using the rat network right, probably knows where everybody's armies are, or a certain number of armies are, can figure out where they're headed. Um, it's absolutely incredible that the prelude, the September prelude, let everybody set up their pieces on the board where they wanted, and now we've just started based on that setup. We're just going to see what happens. I can't wait for more craziness to happen. I'm actually really excited. I think we're going to see more things happen by the end of the day. Um, and I would totally check in on that hashtag every day if you like watching around.
One of the useful things you could do with the um, spy side of the assassin class, and one of the reasons why spies exist at all, is for counterintelligence. That is not gathering, going out on spying missions, but rather ferreting out spies and assassins in your own country who are coming after you. And I say this both as an example of the use of the class on a defensive, sort of maneuver, um, that would be within the lines of lawful neutral or lawful good, but also, something that the patrons involved in this game might want to do is find, beg, or borrow from other, hire from places in their home worlds, whatever. Get people who can counter spy and roll their percentage against whoever's trying to come at them and see if they can locate it and you know kill those assassins. I mean, that's a use of the assassination table. I think is clearly not evil. Killing someone who's coming to assassinate you. Sorry, I mixed like three arguments together there. You don't have to
I,
respond to all of them.
I'm actually really interested in the counter intelligence aspect of it because here's the and not just countering opponents' spies, but misinformation. Something that I noticed in the
Oh, yeah.
September
Counterintelligence
something
agencies can spread misinformation.
that'd be great because that'd be great because to be able to counter opponent spies could be interesting, and you can do that. You can do that through regular actions. Just you can set up the misinformation yourself so that when the DM makes a successful check, they might discover bad information. Um, what what bothered me? What I noticed during the September prelude, uh, as part of my spying network, was that the countermeasures to magical spying are few and far between. They're not very potent unless you're dealing with high level magic users who can use things like the permanency spell or craft magical items, or things like that. It is very easy to scry any character you have met or know about. Now, high-level characters will know that you're scrying. They will see it. They will notice the magic, but that doesn't stop you from actually getting the information that you need. So, in terms of information, everybody who has access to those sorts of abilities, be it a crystal ball or a magic mirror or just the clairvoyance spell, they're getting that information. It's extremely potent stuff, and put in the hands of elite players using high-level characters, the advantage they have over armies of hundreds of or thousands of soldiers is tough to measure. Because as long as they're using their powers, they can stay 10 steps ahead of you. And also sometimes feed information to a network of assassins who will, cut the snake off at the head. But really interesting. I bet it's a deliberate hole. Just going a little bit further, the low-level Dungeons and Dragons game of diving into underground warrens and castle keeps and things, looking for treasure. The divination spells are really they're scoped small because they're really helpful in that situation of determining, hey, what's on the other side of this door? What's on the other side of this wall? Or which direction do we go to avoid the monsters? Or which direction do we go to get the treasure, right? In that small scale, they're great, right? Maybe you'd rather have a fireball at that time, or maybe you'd rather have something else. But, you can use those spells to make your treasure hunting quick and clean. They mitigate risk. But at this large scale, um, those tools still work, but in a player versus player situation, you don't really have any countermeasures, and that's where it sort of breaks down. Clairvoyance being a third level spell kind of makes sense now, right? Because if it were only usable in a dungeon setting, you'd make it maybe level. You could even argue it for it being a level 2 spell, right? But as it stands now, it has unlimited range, and it lasts for about a minute per level. So if you know who you're spying on or what you're looking for, um, you basically have unlimited information. Really interesting stuff, and illusionists actually have a lot of countermeasures, but they're very short-lived. You could protect yourself from scrying for a few minutes at a time or an hour at a time. Not really helpful. So the metagame, as it were, is divination, and I'm excited to see what happens for the rest of the month, whether any of that changes. And of course, we're talking about AD&D, so the metagame is also have wish spells.
One of the things we promised to talk about on this show that we never did talk about is psionics. And how that is really relevant at this point is twofold. One, Rick Stump sent me a message Thursday about getting him back on to talk about psionics. And two, one of the things using clairvoyance and other and specific forms of divination magic, one of the ways to balance it is that you have a chance of drawing the attention of psionic attackers every time you use certain forms of those spells. And I wonder if, and obviously that only affects AD&D players. So I wonder if those people using AD&D divination spells are having those chances checked for.
Oh, that's a great point. Since I doubt that, just because the ref has had his hands absolutely full. But let's put that bug in his ear as sort of a, I don't know if it's supposed to be a balancing factor to nonstop scrying, but yeah, and lots of, if you hit the deities and demigods book, there's a lot of psionically active demons and devils and angels. which has implications there. So I think
Yep.
we gotta put
Here's
this bug in the ref's ear, Warpig, because I think that uh, that we can give him this tool to put in his toolkit to make Brovenloft even more exciting.
here's the exact paragraph. And again, we want to get Rick Stump on because um, this is exactly what we wanted to talk about. It was an article on his site. Use of psionic powers or related magic spells such as clairaudience, clairvoyance, ESP, detection, levitation, etc., does not attract the attention of creatures or monsters with psionic powers unless they are within range and attuned to such activity, which is a very big unless. A perusal of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual will reveal which sort of creatures are to be expected and guarded against if psionic powers are exercised, including those spells.
Oh boy.
And that's pretty much all your divination spells.
What page is
And
that?
is in your player's handbook at the end of the psionic spells, chapter 117. Right as the bards are beginning.
Got it.
And a lot of those creatures are just on the astral plane wandering about. So, yeah, it's not a frequent thing. It's not an everyday or thing, but man, it sure can happen, and it sure sucks when it does.
Yeah, like
So,
it might be a 1 in 1,000 thing, but I happen to know of one spy network heavily using divination spells that cast anywhere from 3 to 8 per day.
that, yeah, I mean, those are big chances. People who could all of a sudden show up with their brains eaten. Just, uh, just, uh, just some little, little tidbits hidden here and there in the AD&D rules make a big difference. Um, Also, I want to say one thing about Brovenloft before we jump subjects. Um, I really think it is against the intended feel of the setting that Brovenloft is meant to be implementing, for it to be easy for people to leave the demi-plane of the dead. I think it should be easy to enter and hard to leave because they were built as prisons for various ne'er-do-wells. And having it all be in one terrain is great, obviously, because it's been fun and hilarious. But people randomly jumping back and forth between their home campaign and Brovenloft, or trivially doing so, is, I think, against the
The
spirit
spirit.
of, especially a Halloween horror October themed campaign. So it's up to, the people running the place, obviously. But I think if you enter Brovenloft during October, you should be on lockdown during October and shouldn't be allowed to go anyplace else. That's just my humble opinion, which holds, precisely as much water as anybody listening wants to give it.
Hmm. For what it's worth, I agree. Um, To me, it's a hindsight thing. Because the thing that made Brovenloft so much fun so far was the spontaneous nature of it. And if if you were to do another event in the future, then you'd want to set up one or two house or ground rules ahead of time about how people interact with it. But I do agree. I do agree about that. The trick was getting. I think the main thing that we wanted to establish was how do we get people from outside Brovenloft to interact, which that's part of the fun. It's not just the jockeying for position amongst these huge monsters, but how do we get players to come in and actually play in the game? That's the hard
Yeah.
part.
And now all the patrons are going to be um, obsessed with machinations against each other, and most of them are the DMs. And so campaigns who have players in Brovenloft, uh, they were running, their home GMs were running uh, modules that were, the details of which had been sent to them. And now what are they? There's suddenly a dearth of content to run associated with Brovenloft. So that's also going to be a challenge to set up.
Yeah, some of the patrons have um, made description sufficient to play a little bit. Some of the patrons have actually either generated a dungeon or a theme for the dungeon so that you can randomly generate as you choose. For example, I believe um, in the Pope's domain, the Pope the Pope is uh, influenced by Assassin's Creed and Super Mario Brothers video games. So yeah, if you want to have an adventure in the sewers and the catacombs um, below Rome, just you know you can whip up a dungeon with a Mario Brothers theme and you'd be appropriate. But I don't think a lot of the patrons have created anything else that's helpful for players, which is um, B Dubs in Twin Peaks is a good example. B Dubs great DM, but he said flat out at the beginning, "I'm not creating anything. Like this is just the domain. Here you go." So Twin Peaks is available as a base of operations, but there's no real content there. There's an example of the other way. So we'll see. I mean, the first during during Brovenloft, the first sessions I think are going to be run tomorrow. I think of all the DMs, I think we've got a game running every day but Tuesday every week. I think Tuesday and Saturday are the days that nobody has a game running. So I think we'll see Red Frontier is probably going to be in Brovenloft tomorrow. I don't know who's the Wednesday game. I think that's Dubs are on, and Trollopolis plays on Thursday, and anyway, I don't have them all straight, but we're gonna find out through the week just how much fun everybody has at the player level, at the session level.
Well, Brian's going to be missing, so it's either going to be me or Jeffro on Thursdays. And by me, I mean me in Brovenloft, not me in, Bomb Brazil.
Right, right. We all would like to play in Brovenloft if possible, so we'll find out what happens.
But speaking of Bomb Brazil,
Yo,
um, one of the complaints I saw in the Trollopolis chat was that there were these games where either the game master doesn't provide you with the choice to where everywhere you go, you run into the adventure that he had planned for that night. Or everywhere you go, you run into a adventure. So you never go any place that's boring because there's always an adventure waiting for you somewhere. And that the Trollopulus or Broasar on the whole despise those sort of events, despise those sorts of campaigns. Those sorts of campaigns were for weaklings and subhumans who could not manage to run the kind of stern and austere games that St. Gygax himself used to run. Now, obviously, I'm, exaggerating there, but there is an implied corollary to that motto, to that line of thinking. And I believe my fellow host is about to identify the implied corollary now.
Sometimes you end up in a boring place.
That is entirely correct. If your choices matter, if your choices are real, you can choose to do the boring thing. Which brings us back to Bomb Brazil session on Thursday, which I was the game master for. Now, full confession. There was a slight little bit of normally we run the you can start anywhere you want, you can do anywhere you want. I let the players know ahead of time, hey, this is what's going on. And the players were pretty much on board with starting where I had a specific set of events set up. So they chose to do that. People can say that's railroady. I don't think it is. I think it's out of character interaction to let people know, hey, this is going on with Bomb Brazil, or this is going on with Brovenloft. I have kind of a Brovenloft thing here. If you want to, you can go on this Bomb Brazil thing, and that will link you up with Brovenloft and provide you with some non-nuclear waste, non-radioactivity, non-burned down countryside means of getting to Brovenloft, which was once again, I didn't know, because I hadn't been told, that there were now magical pine cones which teleported people to and from Brovenloft with the ease of an elevator ride. So there was some things that I had been putting in place and planning for Bomb Brazil, and a little link thing that players had discovered there for almost a month, predating all of this.
So you're saying that is that you had some ideas to get in and out of Brovenloft before it became trivial easy for people to get in and out.
I had some ideas that people could end up getting in and out of Brovenloft before Brovenloft was even a thing.
And I can tell you from past experience as one of your players, this is actually not an uncommon. This is not an abnormal thing for you to think of.
So the players chose to start where I had suggested they could, especially since the thing they wanted to explore relied on them having access to a magic item that one of their companions had, who had apparently absconded with it and then disappeared in the area of a nuclear explosion. So they didn't know where he was, they didn't know what he was doing, and he had, to all intents and purposes, vanished. So they wanted to go and find where he was, what he was doing, and so forth. All right, they get to this other dimension. They arrive outside of a city. It's a gargantuan city with 200-foot walls. And the walls are, although they didn't measure this at the time, the walls are 20 feet on a side around this city. And they don't know what shape the walls are, because when the walls are 20 feet long, or 20 miles on a side surrounding this city, 200 feet high, 20 miles long surrounding this city. And they don't know what the configuration of the walls are, because a 20-mile hike just to cover the entire distance of a wall makes it pretty hard to circumnavigate the structure. So they see, now again, they don't know this is how big the city is. They just see these monumental walls that stretch off in the distance. And as they're walking closer to the walls, they see there's windows and balconies, and their magnificent climbing thief, who is a half orc. For those of you that don't know what that means, in AD&D, half orcs have phenomenal cosmic climbing power, climbs up to the balcony, lets down some ropes. Their small army, there's about 16 characters, 6 of whom are PCs, the balance of whom are henchmen, climbs up into this apartment set up high on the wall, goes into the kitchen. Now remember, this does not take, this isn't as quick as I'm describing it, because it's all climbing checks and then all debates and all questions about, wow, these walls are so high, do giants live here? And serious questions about whether or not giants actually live in this city. Which is not a discussion I had expected to take place, but then again, I don't expect anything. As a GM, I'm not trying to lay breadcrumbs or trying to, I'm not trying to guide the players in any particular direction. I'm just throwing out what is there and letting them go. I think that's where a couple of players may have been misled. They thought that because I had told people where this module might be found and would begin, that they expect, and this was after like 3 or 4 weeks of just hints. I was just hinting where this might be found and where something similar who they might want to go to find something like this. So finally I gave a blatant hint last night, because 3 or 4 weeks of hints wasn't subtle enough. I was being really subtle, and it apparently was too subtle. So I did blatant hints, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. If you keep on throwing out the subtle hints, sometimes you give blatant hints and then let them choose. If they don't want to, if it sounds like something they want to do, then they'll go and do it. If it isn't, then they'll go and not do it. And I also found out that, sometimes subtly hinting that a non-player character talks interminably, by you yourself talking interminably, sometimes the players interpret that as if it's the game master wanting to talk on and on and on and on, and
That was
and
actually
not
really funny.
and
Because I
and
was
not
thinking
th-
the same thing. I was like, I'm just gonna let her talk. I want to see where he's going with this. I want to see how long he can go on with this.
it was really the character who just would ramble on forever, and I kept rambling on forever until somebody asked a question, and then I could finally stop. Oh boy. And I really was rambling on for 2 or 3 minutes, I think.
Oh, it was awful. I thought it was. I didn't think it was hilarious, but I think for the first minute, I wasn't entirely sure that that was going on, and then by a minute, I was like, okay, I get it.
Um, but yeah, I think they were expecting me to railroad them through the module. And the hint to start it was as far as, it wasn't really railroady either. It was just a hint to the players. Um, and then after that, I wasn't railroading anything. So they got inside this apartment, they heard somebody snoring, and they went into the kitchen and found this big, huge fat man lying down on the table with this meal, half-eaten meal next to him, and he was snoring. So they arranged to he was not a giant, he was human, the room was human, the balcony was human sized, everything was human sized, which I was hoping was enough clue that no, the half-hour discussion they had about it being giant size. I was hoping all of these things were clues that no, this wasn't a giant-sized city, that these were just normal humans building on a massive scale. Um, so immediately upon coming to this strange city, they decide to break into an apartment instead of looking for a door. And then they decide to tie this poor cook up and wake him up and ask him questions at knife point, which I admit I wasn't expecting. So the very first thing the cook says in response to these questions is, "What? What? What do you mean? I don't understand." And the very next thing the cook says in response to all of these questions, for again, I think it was a full half hour, it may have been longer, was, "What? What? What are you asking? I don't understand." Now, I don't mind telling you, I was incredibly bored at this point because there was literally nothing going on, and I was sincerely racking my brain to come up with anything exciting to happen, and I couldn't think of a single darn exciting thing to happen at this point. I was just trying to get things to go a little bit faster and do everything I could not to slow them down. Um, and so we got off the wall. Eventually, they decided, oh, we shouldn't be tormenting this poor cook. He knows nothing. And inside my head, I'm thinking, yes, yes, he knows nothing. And if he did know a sliver of something, he's too scared to answer. He doesn't know what's happening. You all are extra dimensional travelers. And I gave him a couple of small clues that he knows extra dimensional travelers. He's seen them before, but he's never seen these specific kinds of extra dimensional travelers. And he's just too scared to answer anything. So eventually they leave, they get off the balconies, leaving all their ropes behind because they have to leave them there to clamber down. And they go walking, doing the 10-mile hike to get around the corner. And they meet the city guard, and the city guard asks them to, take an oath that they're not going to go around breaking any laws. I thought this would just be a little common thing. And by this time, it's clear everybody's bored. And we have a short break to talk about everybody being bored. And I say, look, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry that, oh, no, right before this, they decide, no, we're not going into the city. We're going to turn around and we're going to head off into the black sand wastes in search of the adventure. And I'm like, okay. Specifically, the assignment they accepted from this one patron was there are secrets in this dimension I wish to see unearthed. Go get them. And kind of the question the player characters asked at this point was, why us? How do we know? And his basic answer was, I have confidence in you that you will notice the secrets and that you will be capable of going and unearthing them when you notice them. Maybe his confidence was a bit high. So they turn around and go wandering off into the black sand wastes. I'm doing cool little details, to try and make the setting seem a little bit exotic. The bricks of the road repel this sand that blows constantly. And we have a little talk about how bored everyone is. And I say, look, I'm genuinely sorry everyone's bored. But in my defense, you guys are choosing to go and do boring things. I'm literally trying to tell you by saying I don't know anything several different times in different ways that he doesn't know anything and that questioning him further will be fruitless. I did everything I could have short of telling you he doesn't know anything. You should move on. You searched the kitchen and there was nothing there outside of normal kitchen stuff. You searched the dining room and there was nothing there outside of what's normally in a dining room. Somebody went upstairs to search, the cook's bedroom, and all they found in there were clothes and other assorted accoutrements that you would expect a cook or any normal person to have in the room. There's no shrines to demonic gods. There's no, there's no necklace of fingers. There's no,
I mean, I want to jump in here. I don't think anybody was fooled about the cook and whether he was useful or anything like that. By the time we got to that point, the players were bored and frustrated. But on the other hand, none of us were really thinking of good questions to ask. It was pretty clear that the walls in this city were not going to be exactly what they thought they were, but we didn't want anything to do with the city. We thought we were going to that temple, and so we were basically stuck in a spot where we couldn't get to that temple, and nobody thought of any good questions to ask that would help move the situation along or make a decision as to what to do next. There's a lot of reasons why that happened, and a lot of reasons why you or the players could have done or said something different so that it didn't happen. But once we were at that point, everybody was too bored and tired to actually turn the game session around. And frankly, we could have just stopped the game and talked about initiative for the rest of the night. Nobody, even people who normally are really sharp, I'm thinking in particular, one player who's typically sort of the smartest guy in the room, and the guy who can get us unstuck. I think he was busy with work because we basically didn't hear from him for most of the night. So what? Like these things happen. But like by the time we were interrogating the cook, it was off the rails. Like it was obvious from that point that nobody was even thinking of any good questions. And that's why the rest of the game sort of went the way it did. So what was your so what were you driving at? I'm not in game, like that's what happened.
The master legitimately assumed that if he placed you next to a big, large city and said, I want you to discover some secrets, you would go into the big, large city.
Well, I mean, out of character, if the master knew that there was a city on the other side where he was teleporting us, he should have just said that. This
Probably.
his whole mysterious shtick. Well, I mean, I can tell you from my perspective, we already felt the railroadiness of it. Like, hey, this is a prepared thing, and here's how you engage with the prepared thing. And if the master knew more about it, when we spent like half an hour grilling the master, okay, tell us more. Like, what do you want us to get? What do you want us to do? Right? Why are you sacrificing thousands of gold pieces worth of spells to get us to a place that we could just get to for free? Right? We needed more information. And frankly, I wanted to use my assassination table on the master by the end of that conversation. So I think in that way, so everybody comes into the session tired. We don't get the information that we asked for. And now finding out that the master actually had that information and could have just said, oh, yeah, so where we're taking you, we're not taking you to where you were before. Here's a city. Go check it out. Right. Um, that alone would have at least set us the expectation and given us enough information to decide whether we wanted to do that or we wanted to just jump into the bag and go to where we wanted to.
Let me put it
So
this
that
way.
was that was a huge missed opportunity.
The
Um,
master can't. There are certain things the master has been able to freely talk to you about, and there are certain things the master hasn't freely talked to you about. And they have had a commonality every time.
well, I mean, in terms of what happened at the beginning of that session and why it went down the way it did when everybody was sort of tired and frustrated, that's why. And I do not care at all what the in-game reasons are.
Well, what I thought of after the module is that I should have set you down inside the city.
That would have sort of cut to
That was my chief error. I should have set you down inside the city.
that would have been the band-aid on the beginning of the session for sure. Because I
So
know
that
that you put like based on your descriptions and everything, you put a lot of work and thought into the nature of this realm and how it interacts with Cholopolis realm and everything like that. So like the 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 work and everything is well appreciated. It was just sort of we got off to a really bad start um, and there was no fixing it.
it was my starting you off inside the city would have given you challenges right off at the beginning. It would have given you interesting situations to react to right off at the beginning. It would have given you questions to answer immediately. It would have given you something uh, to do. It would have given you choices to make right away. meaningful choices. And
Yeah,
that
and the one thing that the one thing that I want to, you're absolutely correct. The one thing I want to stress about the master's introduction to the adventure, the part that wasn't clear, that really twisted my brain, was we made it very clear what we wanted to do when we got into the black sand. So what wasn't made clear from the master was, hey, if you're going to accept my help on this, you're not doing that, right? Like, I'm sending you in for a different purpose. That wasn't clear because all we wanted to do was find that ruined temple and check it out. Like, that was our priority number one. So yeah, putting us right in the city, of course, would, in hindsight, that would have been a great way to start it off. And
I didn't
also,
think
you know, players who are awake and
I
itching to play would help too.
I literally didn't think of that until 2 or 3 hours after the session ended.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't think of it till you mentioned it. Should have been so obvious.
I'll tell you what the difficulty was, is I thought of this ahead of time, and because I thought of it ahead of time, um, I kinda had the idea locked in my mind. I didn't rethink the idea.
Hmm.
If I had had the idea off the top of my head, there was a good chance I would have thought of something better because that's how it works with me.
It was, you mean the introduction to the thing? Because I mean, I know you've got ideas on what, what we would find in there. So
No, just everything, whatever I think about stuff for the game or a setting or whatever, what I think up spontaneously in the moment is always better than what I have prepared ahead of time. That's just always how it happens.
that's
Unless
isn't that the great thing about RPGs? If you really just, or when you get the opportunity to just trust your instinct and go with it, uh, the stuff that comes out is incredible.
unless I'm feeling under the weather or tired, and I was feeling under the weather last night. Um, it really wasn't until you guys got into the library that I was like, okay, there's something I can chew on right now.
Yeah.
But by then it was too late. And I really did have something exciting to chew on right then. I'm like, bam, okay. Then everything came together and I was awake and excited and I knew stuff could go in what directions it could go and things like that. And then it was 9:30 and it was too late.
Hey, that sort of, it raises a question for me, and I've that's happened to me in a few games before. How do you know when it's time to just take five and stop the session for the night? Like, we didn't necessarily have to stop the session, but um, even before we actually got to playing, like, nobody really seemed up for a long and involved game. Just an open question. Interesting.
I I've only really had that happen that I can think of twice. Um, I mean, I'm sure it's happened more than that, but it's not. I'm not prone to awkwardness as a game master. I'm not prone to having no ideas. And typically it's when I'm tired and can't think of anything.
Well,
And that's
I'm
really
speaking
rare.
of overall, because even if that's really rare for you, you might have a bunch of people who are just not as energetic as you thought. Because like I keep going over that. Like that was a real problem last time we played. Like everybody was tired. Kess couldn't even play. He was too busy handling Brovenloft requests.
Oh yeah, and Jeffro was not to single any one player out, but everybody was tired.
Yeah, it's all right. Sometimes a session happens like that. But I think to your original point, uh, yeah, maybe bad decisions were made on by all parties because of fatigue or something like that. But you know, if maybe that's where a stupid new D&D module could help, if where a railroad could help. But yeah, you get a bunch of people and they make the decisions. Sometimes it's not interesting decisions.
Um, Maybe we should have just called it at the beginning of the night if everyone was exhausted. But I mean, I understand we all wanted good D&D. We've all gotten good D&D from the Tropolis campaign, so we were all hoping for it.
Yeah, D&D is like pizza. No D&D is better than bad D&D. But anyway,
Is
really,
the is
really,
the chat offering any insights?
chat has been killed by this discussion. I think we have extended the boredom into the past the hour mark on the Geek Gab.
No, but Brian said yes, his brain was fried.
Yeah, Brian was fried. He's corroborating. Um, so yeah, that's how it is. Anything else you want to go over today?
Oh, Bob
Oh,
Stevens, another player, was tired.
oh yeah, Bob was tired.
Uh, Chris said he was tired.
Yep. Oh, is that what happened? I must have been away for that.
Uh, we know Jeffro was tired. I was tired.
Mm,
So yeah, I
it
mean, when you
happens.
have the game master and 2/3 of the players are all not firing on all cylinders, yeah, that'll take a hit on your session. Well,
I was just checking in on Brovenloft. Nothing crazy's happened in the past hour and a half. So your patron's probably safe if you're rooting for one or you're playing one. Nothing crazy's happened. I hope we get to have more reports by next week. Warpig, do we have anybody lined up for the next couple weeks for guests?
um, maybe Rick Stump for next week.
Talk about Psionics.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
That'd be great to talk to him. He's always I always like talking to him about D&D. We kind of own that conversation.
so sometimes I think the biggest piece of wisdom I got out of this is sometimes if you're feeling sick and nearly everybody else is too, sometimes it's better to call the game rather than charging on.
The hard part is recognizing that, for sure. That was a very unusual confluence of. We have a disagreement. Getting together for D&D is worthwhile, even if things don't go as well as usual. Yeah, if you mean getting together with your buddies, absolutely. But maybe you don't play so much D&D. Maybe you.
Well, the ending is what shaped up, everything from the stagecoach pulling up to the end is what was,
Saved it.
saved it. Yeah. So the beginning may have been bad, but that latter half, the only thing that went wrong with the latter half is that when the opportunity for an adventure finally came, we didn't have the time for that, but we did get a good introduction to Ultima Magnus, the city that is the crossroads of worlds, which of course you will recognize is a spiritual successor, at least, to one of my other cities.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize that until just right now.
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier in the show. I was like, I know what Warpig's doing. Even if he doesn't.
And he did not. But yeah, the ending of it was good. So maybe sometimes you just have to, if you hit a boring patch because of your mistakes as a GM or a DM or player choice, maybe you just have to push on through and it'll get better.
Yeah, I think going over it sort of helped us learn a lot, and I hope everybody who listens later got some insight out of it. To reiterate what I've been thinking of is as as a player, uh, maybe maybe being clearer about what you're looking for. If any one of us could have better articulated, hey, we want to do this and we want to ask the master how he can help us with this, or what does he want to do, that sort of thing. So being more clear about sort of what your plans are for the evening would help. And a um, recognizing when players are sort of out of it, what do you do about them? And if everybody's out of it, maybe you just sort of stumble on. My thoughts just scrambled inside my head as they were getting to my tongue.
Also, if you have a good game master who likes to show by showing instead of by telling things to you outright, uh, pay attention to what he's doing.
Oh, this is and this is the thing that I think from a player's perspective you really need to remember, which is, and this happens all the time when you play D&D. You start off doing one thing, or you start off wanting to do one thing, and then a wandering monster check goes wrong, or uh, you find out some NPCs or some villains have changed the board on you. You know, you wanted to go one way, but you can't go that way. You have to go the other. You have to be flexible and adaptable. And the biggest problem we had was that we forgot that lesson. We were too tired to adapt. Can't go to the temple that you wanted to go to? Well, okay, here's this city. Our two main options were to go wandering on the waste looking for the temple or try the or try this thing. Just be flexible. Like, okay, we can't do what we want to do. What can we do? Right. That would have helped a lot. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson from the player's perspective. Right. You're only guaranteed a certain amount of session time. You're not guaranteed to be able to do the module or the dungeon or whatever that you want, or the way that you want it. So that's the wisdom I've gleaned.
And I don't know how we're going to... That's something we should talk about sometime later, or maybe have Brian or Chris or somebody talk about, is the role of devourers in bags of devouring and bags of holding.
Oh, that's the cool thing about the way Trollopolis is run, is that Brian and Jeffro have been very welcoming to any and all crazy stuff added to the game by another DM. So we've got a fortunate set of game masters.
Yeah. Well, I'm good. I think we have a good summation, so I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Picking up and moving on.
Got a good thing going. Anyway, that was fun to talk about. Lots of wisdom, lots of crazy stuff to look forward to. I'm ready to wrap up unless you have any last thoughts.
No, actually, I'm tired. I think we should quit while we're ahead.
That was 30 minutes ago. But anyway, I mostly kid. I'm not kidding at all. It was a good discussion, but we're all tired. So I hope everybody has a great week. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Bradford Walker, looking forward to your learnings on the domain game running AD&D. Really great stuff at his blog. And check Twitter for news on Brovenloft. It's been really entertaining. In fact, right after the show, I think I'm going to go watch the latest in the fight for Stormbringer in the Cosmos. But that's it for today. I'm signing off, Daddy Warpig. The show's yours.
All right. We want to thank everybody who came and listened live and participated in the chat. We want to thank everyone who will listen later. We are Geek Gab, available on youtube.com/Geek Gab. We are here just about every Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And you can also catch us on SoundCloud.com, on the Google Play Store, and on Apple, on the Apple Media Store. Just do a search for Geek Gab. You can download us to the device of your choice, your Apple iPhones, and so on and so forth, your Android devices, or your home computer, or you can just listen to us on the web. We are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret, we will be back.